Hey, good morning, party people. I see a surly dev in there in the chat. Is there a Clippy for Microsoft Access? You know, I haven't used Access in so many years. That was one of the things that I got started with on SQL Server. Oh, Spitfire, good to see you as well. Got the European or the British contingent in the house. I got my start with SQL or with Access back in the 1990s, and I had to upsize a couple of applications from Access to SQL Server. And once I discovered how easy SQL Server was, I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" You know, it's actually really powerful. Just the whole concept of being able to do backups really easily without having to worry about the open file problem, that was spectacular. So I'm going to do a different office hours this morning. I'm going to pluck questions out of PollGab up there that aren't SQL Server related or aren't related to the Microsoft data platform. Still have a hot mess here in the office. I'm trying to hang up everything. I got a really cool, I was really excited about this thing when it came in via Etsy. That was really kind of nifty. Oh, Michael Swart, James in the house. So I love this, but so I'm in the process of hanging up everything inside here. So let's see. We'll go in and get super base. Anytime that the product's name sells itself that hard, you kind of wonder about the actual quality of the product. So the first one, Haydar asks, what are the pros and cons of living in a condo versus living in a house? The same floor plan that I was in San Diego, same floor plan of the apartment that I was in, a different condo, but the same floor plan, just listed for $1.8 million US. 1.8 million. Oh, G. Barkley. Mild Man John. Oh, a couple of regulars inside here. Listed for $1.8 million US. Two bedroom, about 1,300 square feet, two bathroom. Now, great views and all that. I just moved into a house in Vegas that has 5 bedrooms, and really it's 6 bedrooms, like 4,000 square feet, and it costs less than half of that. Now, some of that is just location, but generally, whenever you find things that are packed in tightly closer together, and that's where condos, the prices really start to go up. Things that I miss from a condo is a doorman, people at the door 24/7. Oh, gee, Surgeon, Netherlands in the house. Having someone at the door 24/7 who can do things like take packages, let your housekeepers into the house, whatever. That's really convenient. But in a house, the big pro is space, just the ability to have space, your own pool. For example, I have my own pool. Morning, David. But that also comes with maintenance too. Like I'm out there most mornings going and cleaning the parts out of the pool, cleaning the leaves and palm tree fronds out of the pool. So got to get a robot that works better than that. Next up, let's see here. Next up was interesting. Anatoly asks, would a younger database administrator, Brent Ozar, prefer working from the office, working from home, or hybrid, and why? So I've been working from home, or like a hybrid of it, since 2004, I think. So coming up on 20 years. So that kind of tells you that I preferred working from home for a really long time. But what I used to do was I worked from a co-working space. With co-working, you have a lot of people who work from home, but they all decide to or opt into working from the same office. But these people don't work for the same company, so you can go find a co-working space. WeWork was one of the big .com kind of stories out of that. But you would go in there. I loved being around all kinds of different disciplines. So photographers, wedding planners, all that. He aided a younger DBA. He also didn't type that many typos in a short tweet. Morning, Carl. So yeah, I was a database administrator back in 2003, 2004, when I started working from home. And I did a hybrid of, I did co-working places. I would drive into my office I worked in a different city. So I would drive to my office like 1 week every month or 2 months. And I just really love working from home because I am productive between like 4 a.m. and noon. So I try to get all my work done that requires mental gymnastics, things that require hard thinking. I try to get that done between 4 a.m. and noon. And then after 12 noon, I'll do things that require less mental involvement. Because sometimes companies want you to be near a keyboard. But I would be near a keyboard and just, looking at whatever, surfing the web, reading links, whatever, because I'd gotten my work done earlier in the day. Hey, Renegade. Or Renee. Yeah, that answers that one there. Next up, we have this one was funny. The Fall Guy asked, do community members fall off the social media grid when they go to Microsoft? Yes, for like two different reasons. One reason that Microsoft new hires tend to drop off the social media network is they're overwhelmed with things inside of Microsoft. Microsoft is a giant company. They have their own awesome social media network like Yammer. Yammer. They have their own social media networks and their own mailing lists and things like that. Exactly, I agree, Surly Dip. So they tend to be overwhelmed with participation things inside of Microsoft, and they're all excited and they want to be team players, and they go and devour all of that material. The other reason why is that the things that they used to be deeply involved in, say that you see someone who is a SQL Server presenter, they used to talk about things inside of SQL Server. Well, when they go to work for Microsoft, they're often working on new versions of things that they're not allowed to talk about yet. And so when they write presentations or write material, it's really for customers or people under NDAs or support people inside of Microsoft. And then when the product comes out, you would think, oh, great, they're going to be out talking and evangelizing about that feature. But remember, they're working on the next thing now. They're working on something else. So those are the two big reasons that I see people just simply drop off the radar once they go to work for Microsoft. Next up, this one was a little data platform-ish, but I wanted to put it under the off-topic one. Faradoon says, how difficult would it be to lift and shift Constant Care from Amazon to another cloud provider? Impossible. Just simply would not be doable. Should we be concerned about cloud provider lock-ins? Yes, in the same way that you would be concerned about language lock-ins or database lock-ins. Because after all, if you're using C# and Microsoft SQL Server, you're pretty much locked into the Microsoft stack. If you're using Java and Oracle, you're pretty well locked into the Oracle stack. So there's always been lock-in. It's really a fictional pipe dream that you're going to suddenly pick up your application and move it somewhere else without significant changes. Next up, Zynep asks, when you were a database administrator, what criteria did you use to decide which coworker battles and DBA battles were worth fighting? I like to ask my manager what's important to them. What do they need in order to succeed? What are the things that would... or Malf, if you want, put the question in up there and then I'll hit it, just because I don't track all the questions as they're coming in. Ask my manager what's important to them, because that way it helps keep me focused on things that really matter. If you try to nail down every battle, if you try to get involved in everything that you don't necessarily agree in, then it's really easy to make enemies across people inside your company. I've certainly been guilty of that, not just in my own companies that I've worked for, but also in communities where I've gone and picked a battle with something in a community where I was like, it's really important that we do something this way. And then at the end of the day, all I was doing was pissing people off because volunteers going to volunteer. People are going to do the things that they want to do, not necessarily the things that are right for the organization. So there's a great XKCD comic about I can't sleep, someone somewhere is wrong on the internet. People are wrong all the time inside your company. From your point of view, you got to focus and pick your battles on what your manager thinks is the most important. Next up, let's see here. Scroll down a little further. Gustav asked, have you ever had a Windows update brick your SQL Server? Yes, mostly around failover clustering. Next up, let's see here. I'll come down for the... Arnold asks, How do you distinguish tech advertising from technical training? Oh, thanks for posting that link there, Surly Dub. Now, it's funny that it's 386. That's kind of a nice number for us old tech geeks. How do you distinguish tech advertising from tech training? It tends to be the person or company who's giving the training. If you see someone whose employer is Acme Industries, and the topic of the session is why Acme Base, say that they have their own database, why Acme Base is the best database there is, that's probably advertising. I really wish that technical conferences and webcasts and whatever would put two things on every session. Number one, who the employer is of the person who's giving the speech or doing the training. And two, a required answer from the speaker saying, have you used this technology in production environments? Because I've seen, especially when brand new features come out, people submit abstracts that are like, I think that Polybase is the best thing in the universe. And I'm like, okay, great. Have you ever actually used that feature in production? And they're like, no, but I used it on AdventureWorks, with a 5 gigabyte database. Where I'm like, that's not really related to anything. So the things that help me there are, number one, who's the employer of the person giving the talk? Number two, has this person used it in production? Just because someone works for that company, like I attend sessions from people who work for Microsoft all the time, just because they work for Microsoft and they're evangelizing a feature doesn't mean it's a bad session, but it helps you keep in mind that they're probably not going to say anything negative about that particular technology. Also, if someone's never used the feature in production, that doesn't mean I'm not going to attend the session. It just means that I'm going to take their advice with a grain of salt and keep in mind that they're probably not going to have real world advice about how that particular feature works. I see this all the time with stuff, edge case features, where I walk into the session because I'm like, who on earth would actually use this feature? Sometimes I don't go to sessions to learn. Sometimes I'm more like, let me see why someone would evangelize this. And then that tells you a whole interesting story. Next up, let's see here. Oh, this was interesting. You gotta do what you gotta do asks, hi Brent, our boss asks us for an average hours spent as a consultant on the typical customer in order to create a standard offer. I tried to explain that it depends. Do you have any thoughts? Yeah, so if your boss has a bunch of clients, assuming that your company has a bunch of clients, and then just take how many hours you spend, divide it by the number of clients, and that should give you a rough average. You're going to have over consumers and under consumers, but if you want to get that kind of number, that's how you get started. If your boss comes back and says, well, we don't have good data on that, then that's where you jump in and go, you know what? I don't either. Because if you have multiple clients, boss, you're the one who's supposed to be doing that kind of high overview vision. And if the boss says, well, we're just getting started with this offering and we're trying to get an idea, you go back to the boss and go, so am I. I have no idea either. Let's see here. Was there another one? Oh, DBA Europe asked, who are your favorite SQL Server bloggers? Let's see. Have you made a production one? I know. Yes, I love going up and asking the presenter. If it's not obvious from the abstract, I love going up and asking the presenter before the session starts, because that helps you understand whether you should stay in that session or not. If you wait until the session starts and you ask that, then it's too late. I just hit the ceiling fan. Got to replace this ceiling fan in here. Then of course you've already wasted your time inside the session. So DBA Europe says, who are your favorite SQL Server authors, books, and blogs? My favorite, because I like really in-depth, detailed diagnosis of edge case problems, things that people aren't going to hit very often. So I'd hesitate giving that advice out to other people. But so I love Paul White's blogs. Paul White, aka SQL Kiwi. Most of the stuff he writes about, you could go your entire career without knowing it. I, however, find it really interesting. I don't need to know it either in most of the circumstances. But I'm like, oh, let me learn more edge case scenarios that I'll probably never face, but I find it really interesting. Or did we have any other non technical questions scrolling way down through the list? Well, Mouth asks, what is your standing desk? This is a a very desk, VARI, because I wanted something that was very stable, and all the reviews were like it's very stable. Because when I'm teaching, I'm typing a lot, and I don't want the desk shaking like crazy. Um, and I also wanted something narrower. I wanted something really narrower just to optimize my office. If I wasn't streaming, I would get a wider desk than the Very is. I have the narrowest version of the Very desk. Um, Camaro 322 horsepower. Good to see you again, Camaro. Says, did you find it difficult to part with your 911 after all the customization you put into it? So I had about $20,000 worth of customization into a helmet between the stereo, the radar and laser defense gear, all kinds of little pieces. Like I had a Mods for Cars, that's the name of the company, add on so that I could drop the top remotely as I was walking up to the car, all kinds of little things. Um, and I think what that taught me was to think about the difference between a car that I'm going to have for the rest of my life versus an investment. You know, a car that I'm going to hold for a while and enjoy, but I'm not necessarily going to have until I go to the grave. When I bought Helmet, that 911, I thought I was going to have him for the rest of my life. So I put that level of customization into it. So it didn't bother me when I sold him. The market was just so insane right now for used cars that I felt like I had to sell it because it was never going to be worth more. Like it was only just going to take a long, slow, gradual dive down for like the next 20 years. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to drive a 20-year-old version of that car. So I ended up selling it. I traded it for a car. I say traded it. I sold it, but I bought a car that I haven't shown a lot on social media yet. I bought a 1986 Ferrari 328 GTS, which is, if you grew up in the 80s, 70s, and 80s like I did, the Magnum PI Ferrari, the red Ferrari that Tom Selleck drove. I got mine in black with a red interior. The red interior is just like this deep red. It's like a burgundy, and it's amazing. So that's what I ended up doing, because I'm kind of like the 328 market, I think, is really going to take off over the next decade or two. And it was a beautiful car. It's just one of the most beautiful cars that I've ever seen in my life. It gets better looking every time that I look at it. It is terrible to drive. It's awful to drive. The driving position is bad. The air conditioning is bad. It's not. Oh, David, I've been buying stuff like this for quite a while now. The air. It's not just my model where the air conditioning is bad. The air conditioning is bad through all of them. There's no space. There's almost no luggage space. You just got to put a soft bag inside the back of the car. The trunk is next to the engine, and it gets hot. You know, you put your hand on the luggage and it's hot when you get out of there. The roof, I can drive it with the top on, but I'm kind of like hunched down a little bit because my head is hitting the top of the car. Everything about it, about driving it, is terrible. And so I love the line that James May from Top Gear used. James May said that buying a Ferrari 308 or 328 is like buying the Mona Lisa and hanging it on the outside of your house for other people to enjoy instead of putting it on the inside. That's exactly what it's like. It's a gorgeous car from the outside. It's a gorgeous car on the inside. It's just a nightmare to drive. It's just not comfortable in any way, shape, or form to take for long trips. But it's so gorgeous, I don't really care. You know, so I won't have that one forever. That one will be an investment piece that I'll own for a while and then sell. But God, it's just utterly beautiful. You know, I love those too. I mean, you walking up to it is just breathtaking. I get compliments all the time on that one. Let's see here. Next up, C Cool Guy says, "Are you psyched for F1 racing being hosted next year in Vegas?" Yes, especially because it's a nighttime race. I'm hoping that the cars will sound wonderful next year, especially going down through Vegas. So should be a lot of fun to see. Very excited about this. David says, "Do you have a motorbike as you have a helmet behind you?" No, that is from my Stig costume at Sequel Bits. A few years ago, I went as the Stig, and I had a full-blown Alpine Stars driving suit and Alpine Stars gloves and shoes. I still have the gloves. I don't have the shoes or the suit anymore, just because it wasn't doing me any good. And I spilled red wine on the suit. Tells you a little something about my life. Sequel says, "Are you missing the ocean yet?" No, because I still have the house in Mexico, so I can go back and forth between my condo in Cabo and then the house here in Las Vegas, at least for right now. And I think that's everything in terms of the non-database questions. Yeah, that's it. Okay, perfect. So there we go. Wanted to knock those out of the way and get those out of the queue. Then I will go through PollGab and do another webcast, not today, but probably tomorrow or the next day, and hit the top-rated technical questions out of there. But for now, it's 6:43 a.m. I'm actually going to go wash the Ferrari. Because I've learned living in Las Vegas that you don't want to wait too long before you go and wash the cars because it gets hot really quickly in the afternoons. It's still spring, so it's like 70s for the high this week, but it's been 80s and 90s for the highs other days. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see y'all at the next office hours. Adios.